Welcome to Cyberholic tutorial 1.1.8, and in this video I'm going to show you how to include a partial into your layout and the big advantages of partials coming with Winter CMS. So the current situation, if we look at the code, this is what you have just seen was my old website. This is the new website with some placeholder part and the side panel that we created in the 1.1.7 video. So with 1.1.8 I want to take this sidebar and not include it inside the whole website layout or the layout of our website. And you're going to see in a second why not. So if we go to the code, to the backend, I have the, what is it called? In the backend, I have I went to layouts and opened up my default layout. And as you can see here, we have like our sidebar vertical menus called sidebar menu main. And the thing is that the bigger this gets, I mean, obviously we are going to add more and more links, then this whole layout page is becoming, longer and longer. So instead of having like maybe something like 150 lines per code, you're sooner or later going to find yourself with hundreds and maybe even thousands of lines of code just to get an overview. So the thing is that Winter CMS allows you to create so-called partials. This means that you can include any amount of code into another page, or let's call it into another file, and call that file. Maybe you know that from Joomla, Drupal, Typo3, etc. there are hooks and modules and components, I think it's called in Typo3, so that you can re-add them. So just to get you a quick overview of it, it's like this. If I write curly brackets %partial and then the name of the partial, this means that if I want this partial to appear anywhere else on the website, I don't have to copy and paste several lines of code, but just only this one line of code. So this is really, it's fantastic if you are a script kiddie like me and get lost in hundreds of lines of code, then this is fantastic. So what we are going to do is create a partial and put this code in there. So the first thing that I'm doing is cutting this out into my clipboard so I can copy and paste it. Then to the left of our backend, I go to partials. And in here, I create my first partial. And this partial, I will call it, I could call it, for example, panel main menu. Let's call it main menu.htm. And then copy the code in here. So this is the code that we just took from the default layout file and included it in here. So you could work like that. And I've saved it now, I get an error. I think that comes with my Raspberry Pi, because my Raspberry Pi sometimes I'm like Lucky Luke. I'm faster. I'm more quick than in saving than the Raspberry Pi can follow me to save the files. So I don't know where this error comes up, but now you can see that it works. If you work like that, this would mean that on the left side here in this gray part where you're going to see all of your partials, you sooner or later might end up with dozens, if not hundreds of partials. I take the partial thing to the extreme and usually have dozens and dozens of partials in here, because I just like to separate parts of my code into several parts so that I have a better overview and know where to work to change something. So the best, what I suggest you to do is not to write it like that, but put certain things into subfolders. So what I'm doing here is just creating a subfolder called panels, and in there is going to be my main menu. So if I save it, then you're going to see it on the left side. There's going to be the main menu HTML now inside the panels folder. So what we do now is go back to the default page, and I'm now going to zoom in a little bit for you. And in here, we just did what I just erased, curly brackets, %, curly brackets, partial, and then the partial name. And because I have put it inside a subfolder, I have to call it panels. Panels/main menu.htm. This looks great like that. And to see if it really works, I'm going back to main menu and just add another entry. Save it and reload my website. And let's see if it worked out. So my Raspberry Pi is still loading. It's loading. This is not only the fault of my Raspberry Pi, but also of my internet connection. So if I open up now my side panel, you're going to see the second entry in here, foo. So this is really, I do love this so much about Winter CMS. Don't wonder if you just saw October CMS here, because this is my old website. So as you know, I'm trying to transport my old website into my new one. So, and the old one was made with October CMS, but now I switched to Winter CMS to support the open source movement. And for this, I'm going now to show you another great thing about the partials that we certainly are going deeper with the bigger the website is becoming. One great thing about the partial, there are two very, very superb features of partials. First of all is you can send variables to this partial. For example, I could define a variable by foo equals to blah, 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 blah. Okay, so I just tell them, hey, when opening up this partial, there's a variable foo attached to it. So if I go now to, sorry, just let me zoom in so that you can see it better. Okay, so if I go to my partial now, I could, with double curly brackets, the twig variable showing for foo. I could write it like that, and this would mean, hey, take the variable that has been sent to you from the partial code, meaning blah, and show it in there. So if we refresh my website, let me refresh this. This means the cool thing about this is that you can have like some dynamic stuff going on here, because there is blah now. Okay, so the good thing is that this way you can have some dynamic features. For example, you could put in like, let's say that this is not a main menu, but for example, a net banner, advertisement banner. You could put in here client ID, and then coming from within the code part of the of this page of the component in here, if you remember in the code, you could set up some functions to call, for example, data coming from your database. You could put it in here and say, for example, let's say it user ID, just as an example. So this way you could, for example, oops, no, sorry, this was wrong, like this. You could have it like this, saying, okay, please include in here the user ID, and when loading the advertisement banner, in this case it's the main menu, but if you would have an advertisement code in here, you could define what type of codes are going to be loaded depending on the client that has been sent to this partial. And all of this happens or can happen also in an AJAX call. So this means that instead of refreshing a whole website with partials, you can have only parts of your website reloaded or refreshed. Coming with the demo installation of Winter CMS, when you install it for the first time, there's a calculator demo where you can see if you calculate certain numbers, then he's going to refresh only the result and not the whole website again. So this is a super solution and feature for Winter CMS if you want to have just small parts of your website refreshed and reloaded. Okay, so this is it. I now have a partial sidebar menu. As I mentioned, if this would be, for example, an advertisement, you could just copy this line and enter it in here now for 4 or 5 times, or put it anywhere else on your website where you want it to appear, this partial. And this would mean that if for whatever reason you have to change the code, you don't have to go through every page, but only just this partial and change it in there. So this is really, obviously this saves you a lot of time, and this is really fantastic. Okay, this is partials. And what we are going to do in the next video is include our first link to a sub page. We are creating a sub page for my blog, and link from within this menu partial into that page.